So there were some questions about our poetry prompt assignment for this week. So poetry assignment, language and identity. So what I have here is just trying to give us several different options, but our sort of models and inspiration for this week's language and identity were our readings. So we had Espelot's Bilingual Bilingue, and then Range's Hit, right? And so in hit, we get the pronunciation of the word it with the H on the front of it. And we get that word play between it with the H on front of it and hit, the verb of hitting, right? So there's like a lot of repetition, the way language is used, the reflection, pointing us here to this stanza. When I hit the books, they tried to hit out of me. So what education does to language, and when language is a part of your cultural identity, right, with the podcast talking about Melissa Range being from East Tennessee, the Appalachian Mountains. She's also a first-generation college student. She has advanced degrees. She has a PhD. So sort of like critiquing education and its impact on language and the importance of that language, right? Connected to her identity and who she is and sort of the fight between it. Similarly with Espelot, Bilingual Bilingue, talking about that battle between English and Spanish, and particularly set up from her dad, who's afraid what will happen if she loses that piece of her, the Spanish that connects them, right, to their culture, their family, what happens inside the home, right? There's all those sort of references. So again, how language is being used. And here, right, we get the couplets, which we can reflect on. They're open couplets, which means we have our rhyme, 2-line rhymes, but the ideas go down into the next one. They're not like self-contained. Also that idea of the 2 lines in the couplets reflecting the 2 languages being spoken, reflecting the generational pull between father and daughter, right? So what we have form is trying to also reflect the content and struggle. And so, right, the things with Espelot that looking at structure, imagery, sound, language, the connection to what she had to say. And so like part of this is for us to think about when we're writing our own language poems, language and identity poems, right? Like, okay, so we see like images that she's creating, what images we want to create. And I mean, similarly, if we go back to Range and the idea of when I hit the books, they try to hit it out of me. Right, so is she like getting attacked by a book here? Or, like what images come into our mind? But hit's been hit below the belt and above hit, still hit the sack. Right, so below the belt, if we're thinking about, okay, are we talking like a boxing reference here? Like, again, it's what comes into your head, what images are created. And so that's our goal here. So here, like, please compose 2 poems. So we can think about in terms of content, so language and your relationship to it, your voice and its connection to your identity. And so, I mean, we can think about voice in a lot of different ways. Like, when do we feel able to speak? When do we feel silenced? Again, Range isn't talking about 2 languages, but she's talking about an accent that doesn't fit into some spaces, that's like forcibly pushed out of certain spaces. And then again, something else that falls into this vein of thought, like very open. Form, right, thinking about like those specific techniques that we incorporate into our writing. So here the example is like using repetition of like whatever that word is, right? Like what words would you repeat and why? And I mean, in brainstorms of this, right, maybe we have like slang that works in some places, not in others. Think about the way we speak at home, the way we speak to our parents versus speak at friends, the way we speak at school, right, in the classroom, outside of the classroom. We can think about work, right? How do we talk to our boss? How do we talk to our coworkers? If we have a job where we interact with like public or customers, how do we speak to them, right? So I mean, a lot of times we're changing little bits and pieces of our identity and who we are via our language based on the setting that we're in, right? So I mean, any of those, like what word, we play with. I mean, thinking about texting, social media, right? Using all those abbreviations and things like that. I mean, right? We can think about so many instances. Or maybe we are bilingual or trilingual or however many languages, and we do have these experiences where language fits and doesn't fit, switching between actual different languages, like whatever it is. Um, Using word choice that can play with language in some way. Again, like with hit, how she was like it versus hit, the verb versus, yeah. Using sound in your poems to play with language. Right, it's very open. I mean, and thinking again, form, right? We had the couplets of Espelot with rhyme. Range had three line stanzas that were very short, and she wasn't using rhyme, right? So I mean, just like making these choices, trying some stuff out to make some sort of statement about language and identity. Right, so it is very loose. These are just trying to give you some suggestions, and we have like those two poems as like models of different things that were done. Because, I mean, in some ways they're talking about something that's very similar, that connection of language, culture, identity, and who we are, and when it's accepted and when it's not accepted. But they're also talking about two very different things and doing so in two very different ways, and playing with form and words and setup and stanzas and all of that. So hopefully this helps understand our assignment a little bit better.